Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, and college sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast. And as usual, I'm welcoming in my able-bodied co-pilot. Awesome. You know him as Austin Ward. Awesome. Welcome back to the Tim May Podcast.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, you know, your seat's got your name on it, so it's like welcoming you back is sort of like redundant. But I digress. I'm quite redundant in all kinds of ways. You know, this week we're going to talk about, you and I are going to get into a few of the, I don't know if you want to call it snags or maybe potholes that the Ohio State football team has run into in this spring, you know, that's kind of like, I don't know if the word's holding them back, but the getting ready for the fall and the preseason camp, et cetera. There are going to be some guys doing a little bit of double time because they're missing the spring. And we've talked about a bunch of guys that have been injured, et cetera. But I want you and I to kind of handle that. And then later on on the second half of this podcast, really the second third of this podcast, I've got an interview. That's why I said college sports fans, because I got an interview with Tatum Skaggs, who was the one of the alternate captains for the Ohio State women's hockey team this past season. They went to their second Final Four in 4 years. It would have been their third Frozen Four, and third Frozen Four in 4 years if they hadn't had to skip last year because of the pandemic when they were at the airport getting ready to leave and were told to come back, cease and desist. But I just think occasionally some of these people come along and they deserve their own little time on the Tim May Podcast. What do you think about that concept?
You are the boss of this show, man. Like, so I'm just the co-pilot. Wherever you take it, I'm ready.
Yeah, but man, if I develop engine trouble or if I, drink too much coffee, et cetera, you may have to land this thing. So that's what I'm always concerned what your thinking is, but not really, if you follow my drift. It's called politically correct. But let's get into the Ohio State football situation. It's not really a situation. That's the wrong way of putting it. Spring, Ryan Day and his group look so much forward to this spring. And I think the quarterback battle is ensuing as we expected. The running back battle is ensuing as we expected. Offensive line, they're dealing with that Harry Miller, who may or may not be the starting center when all things break out, but everybody else is fairly healthy along those lines, receivers, et cetera. What I'm getting to here is your concern coming out of the season last year, just like mine and like any Ohio State fans was that pass defense, which was really led up by Alabama, which finished number 122 in the nation. There were a lot of things you wanted to see maybe that they could get straightened out in the spring. Not that you're ever going to know till you open the season against Minnesota this coming season. But, with the guys they've got missing in the secondary, even Dallas Gantt missing at that linebacker spot where they're replacing all three starting linebackers and all four of the top four linebackers. And then in the middle of the defensive line where, Haskell Garrett's sitting out the spring as he recovers from some type of like a touch-up surgery or whatever. And, some other guys are wanting to step up. I mean, that's a little bit of a concern that so many people are missing that they probably are going to be counting on in the fall. Isn't it awesome?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that going into spring, I wouldn't have thought that Ohio State would be a finished product in the secondary, just because we already knew that Cameron Brown would be out, that Court Williams would be limited. So I wouldn't say that any concerns would be alleviated there. And I don't think that I honestly was because of how much high-end talent they have at that position. So the new one for me is it was going to be a challenge to replace those four seniors that you talked about at linebacker. The fifth guy in production was Dallas Gantt. He's out. Another guy who was pushing as a second-year player, Mitchell Melton, he's out. It's going to be a long-term injury, as Ryan Day described it.
Yeah.
So that unit, that's thinner than I thought it would be at this point. It was always going to be inexperienced. Today, what you saw on Friday, what I saw on Monday, it was a lot of nickel packages for Ohio State, which tells you that they still feel better about the numbers they have in the secondary and that, there's a little bit of concern. Get Taraji Mitchell and Cody Simon out there playing linebacker primarily. Then you're working in Craig Young as sort of that bullet guy. Ronnie Hickman is doing some of that stuff as well as they try and patchwork it together. Mm-hmm. So, when you're looking at the back seven as a whole, say, man, that's certainly not what Ohio State wants. probably going to need to pluck somebody out of the transfer portal at linebacker to help alleviate some of these concerns with inexperience and proven veteran stuff. I think we all know who that top target would be. So I don't think up front I have any question about the Rushmen. I think that group is going to be just fine. I think what they have to work with Josh Proctor and Lathan Ransom at safety, once you get a healthy Cameron Brown, Sevyn Banks, starting with those two guys there at corner, everything I expect will be fine. When you go through a spring, you want to be as healthy as possible when you're trying to fix something like you said, number 122 in pass defense. This is a good time to get that work done. And there is a clear limitation on how much Kerry Combs and that defensive staff can do right now.
Yeah, what I was getting to, though, is, like we got to talk to Josh Proctor last week a little bit. And, one of the things he talked about was one of the things that he had to improve, that the group had to improve, was communication, and like right now, Josh Proctor, I don't know. He's one of the few regulars who I expect to be a regular in the fall. I mean, some of these other guys are going to step up and probably take some jobs and stuff, but he's that one returning regular. Marcus Williamson is practicing, I do believe. But, the bottom line is, you want that – if you're going to have a singing group, a Fab Four, you kind of want them practicing the songs they're going to sing, the communications, the harmony, et cetera, which seem to be lacking most of all in that secondary last year, about this guy running over here to help this guy when he should have stayed where he was, et cetera. That's what I'm talking about, is like, it's – if there was ever a group that needed some cohesion coming out of the spring, I think it would be that group. And they're not going to end up with that, obviously, because Sevyn Banks is having to miss the spring now, the rest of spring with an undisclosed injury. And as you talked about Cam Brown, who I think you and I both had penciled in competing for a starting job last year, and was coming on last year till he got hurt. He's not around. So I guess that would be my concern. And of course, linebacker wise, like you just pointed out. Yeah. And I guess it's an ideal world when you can get all of those guys all on the same page, all practicing at the same time and just have it out. But that's what I guess that's what I'm talking about more than anything else, is just kind of the breakdowns of who was covering whom when just were glaring last year at times.
Well, and that's what you're not going to have in the spring. That if you're Ryan Day, obviously you would pick. It'd be ideal to have that true competition to settle a depth chart. A lot of springs you're not going to have that anyway. You don't go live that many times, but that's something that you add to the evaluation pile, and that doesn't exist to compare Sevyn Banks and Cameron Brown to what Ryan Watts is doing. I think what I saw from Ryan Watts from last year to this year physically, I've brought this up before to Berm. He's long and reminds me a lot of Eli Apple once Eli Apple found himself. I know it hasn't maybe worked out for him at the NFL level, but the way that he played, the length, the strength, I think he's almost 6'3". He's kind of like that ideal Kerry Combs corner. So, you don't get to compare him to Cameron Brown. You don't get to compare him to Sevyn Banks, but you can see that, he gets the benefit of those reps that those guys can't take. You were calling it double time duty. I mean, they don't have a lot of other corners. Part of the reason why you're seeing DeMario McCall getting an opportunity to try and help there, I don't think that he actually will when the season winds up, but they need healthy people to get through it. So for Ryan Watts or for Cameron Martinez, to name two guys who really have a great chance, they get a different way into this competition because those other two aren't there. Yeah. And if that winds up helping the depth, which it should, that's a big deal. If they really make a jump out of it, well, then you still have August to play with those pieces and see which five guys you want to rotate there at cornerback.
Yeah, but you want to come out of spring, I just know, I'm just thinking what I would feel like if I was a coach, a head coach, a position coach, a coordinator. You want to come out of spring with some kind of idea in your mind. If I had to put a team on the field, next week, this would be my group, and I would feel really confident about that group playing together, et cetera. I'll tell you a development that, we're videotaping this on a Monday, and the development that was brought up today was Craig Young, looking more and more like one of those bullet positions, safety 1 minute, maybe an outside linebacker the next, that kind of guy. I mean, boy, they can I think we talked about this before on the Tim May podcast. They can put some real specimens out there on the field if they want to, can't they? That, just by the, as John Cooper would say back in the day, would pass the look test if nothing else.
I mean, when I saw him on Monday morning, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always been athletic and versatile and could run, with a really big frame. But now that frame has just, coiled muscle wrapped all around it. And if he's playing in the secondary in some capacity, I mean, that's just scary because people his size should not move the way he does.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, we talked to Matt Barnes about this 100 times, and, Sam Bullitt, you can call it whatever you want. It's an outside linebacker role that can do a lot of different things. It's a safety role that can morph into that. If you were trying to find somebody to play that, I mean, this is a guy who looks like Ryan Shazier, looks like Darren Lee. Those positions aren't, haven't always been called by that moniker, but they have the ability to do a bunch of different things defensively. And, Craig Young is that chess piece, I think, that can really be helpful. And even as impressive as he looks physically, it's not even a sure thing that he would win that job. He fits into what I was talking about before, that Court Williams is not there. Court Williams probably would have been starting in that role or had the first crack at that role as a true freshman. That's how highly Ohio State thinks of his ability there before he got hurt in training camp. So now you've got two of those guys, and you're going to try and if you're Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes, Al Washington, you're certainly trying to figure out how to get both of those on the field because they have rare physical gifts.
That's what I'm talking about. But you're not getting to see all of that, in the spring. And it's kind of, to get on the field, that's like a lot of people were concerned, at the beginning of the year last year when some things weren't making sense from a defensive coverage standpoint. But, those were the guys that, in like a Kerry Combs' mind and maybe, the defensive coaches' minds, the guys that were playing were guys that they sort of trusted to at least line up right. You know what I mean? Because practice was so limited. They missed all of spring. Everything was so disjointed. And then, of course, they had injuries, which added to that. And, that's what I'm talking about from a peace of mind standpoint as a coach. Let me ask you this. I'm not putting you on the spot, but if you had to put two corners on the field right now from the guys they've got, who would those two starting corners be in the Awesome Ward lineup? Or would you just kind of roll a bunch of guys through there? Just give me a couple of names that just, you would like to see maybe get a shot in the fall.
Yeah, I think it'll be Ryan Watts. I think I've been higher on him maybe than others for a while. And so I didn't need maybe much encouragement, but what I saw from that 6 open viewing periods on Monday really pushed it forward for me.
Wait a minute. You guys got to watch 6 periods? All right, go ahead.
I told you on Friday, good things come to those who wait. You didn't want to be first.
Yeah, I didn't. I just wanted to watch something, and I watched a lot of this.
Yeah, it was great. I really wound up being. I wasn't counting on being right, but I was glad that I got a Christmas present.
Yeah, you did.
Anyway, that's beside the point. Ryan Watts, I think, is there, and I really believe that Cameron Martinez is starting to understand what it takes to play cornerback at this level. I think, if you're talking about an ideal role for him right now, it would be slot corner because he's not at a level that a Sevyn Banks or Cam Brown are. Too many Camerons that I'm throwing out here. But I think he would be in that mix because I think that Legend Cavazos still has not got fully healthy really since he's been here.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I would think he'd be ready to play in a starting role if there was a game on Saturday. Tyreek Johnson, he'd have to be a factor just because he's been around for so long. The light hasn't really ever connected for him, hasn't flipped on. He did intercept a deflected ball on Monday morning during one drill that they had, but we've seen this before, spring after spring. He hasn't made that leap to become the 5-star guy that he was once projected, but really almost because you're out of options at that point, he'd need to be out there in some capacity. I think the versatility for them really comes because now they're in a much more comfortable position at safety. I know that wasn't your question, but Lathan Ransom is doing some of that slot corner work. Maybe that means he could help if you had to shuffle some things around. I mean, he's really making that role his own. And Ronnie Hickman is also someone who can do some of the bullet stuff. I saw that with them in nickel. He was out there playing a fairly prominent role at times. Bryson Shaw, they're suddenly in a pretty good, even without Marcus Hooker around, which I don't think he will ever be around again. They're really in a good spot with what they have at safety. Once you put Court Williams back in there, and if you have Craig Young running around. So that's going to help, because really the problem last year was that they wound up being kind of forced to scramble at safety throughout the whole year. And
right.
That shouldn't happen this time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And here's the thing, Marcus Williamson, if, we got to talk to him last week too. And
the reason I didn't put him in there, Tim, he did appear to be limited on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And we did talk to him. You saw him last week, and we talked to him last week. That was why, like, what I saw on that day.
Gotcha.
I just want to throw that in there.
But his
say is right.
Yeah, but his resolve is obvious compared to even a year ago, and he knows, Father Time is knocking on his door from the standpoint of playing at Ohio State. Father Time and Kerry Combs. Are they the same guy? I'm not sure, but it's there's a guy that's got a wealth of experience. Some of it good, some of it really, not very good at all, and sometimes that all adds up and comes together for a guy finally, and and the dedication he's shown, I think, is opening a lot of people's eyes, like you said. But he's another one of those guys that's banged up, and but you just, as you were talking about that, this is like for football teams across the country, Clemson, Alabama, whatever. You're going through spring. There are a lot of guys that you want to see take the bit, and jump up and declare themselves. Yeah, this is my spot, and I think that's what I am talking about more than anything else, is them lacking that part of the chemistry of building a team more than anything else, because I think even fellow players know when a guy has come of age, and is ready to play and stuff, and they know they can rely on him, which changes even the dynamic of the way they play when that guy's on the field. So that's kind of what I'm talking about, and with that said, as we got to talk to Ryan Day on Monday, a fella he brought up who clearly has now turned the corner, it appears, is Teron Vincent, at defensive tackle. And oh my goodness, we all know about him being a former 5-star, et cetera, with oozing ability, but just been held back by this little injury and that little injury over time. With Haskell Garrett missing in there, and and obviously Tommy Togiai gone, Haskell Garrett's having to sit out the spring because of injury. But it's interesting that like a Teron Vincent is suddenly on the lips of Ryan Day, right?
Yeah, and if you made a list of 3 or 4 or 5 Buckeyes who truly needed to emerge this spring, you would have to have included Teron Vincent up there. If not, take the quarterbacks out of it, he might have been number 1 guy that Ohio State needed most.
Agreed.
This spring. Just because of that pedigree that you talked about, you come from an NFL family. When you arrive as a 5-star, those expectations are up there. So that plus a position of need, Haskell Garrett's going to be fine. Ohio State expecting to have him back, for full summer workouts and all that soon. But, you're losing an NFL player in Tommy Togiai. You had 2 of them the year before that you lost on the interior. Very good players. So it's to reload there. It wasn't that smooth. They were extremely fortunate last year that Haskell Garrett not only survived and all that, but just elevated his game to where he was getting those All-American votes, because that was not a sure thing, because that hadn't happened to that point in his career. He had also had, nagging injuries and was learning the position and all that. He went through that process. So if Teron Vincent, and this is a big ask here, makes a similar jump to Haskell Garrett, well, okay, maybe loss of Tommy Togiai doesn't wind up being a huge deal. Yeah. Maybe you have one of the best tandems of tackles again in the country. Who knows? There's a lot of work that has to be done, but Ryan Day is generally very reserved with the press conference and public comments about pointing to an individual. It's a bunch of guys. It's an open competition. We're rotating. To talk the way he did, unprompted, about Teron Vincent tells you something special is going on there potentially, and that could be very good news for Ohio State.
So is Teron Vincent, is he in the running now for the Haskell Garrett Award, or is he in the running or did Haskell Garrett win the Jay Sean Cornell Award? You know, if you follow my drift.
They just pass it on. Yeah.
Yeah. Of guys that stepped up there in the middle, just when you thought they were in trouble, boom, you got a guy that comes on like, you know, wow, okay, the light is shining bright suddenly. And in his approach to the game, his approach to playing, et cetera, and getting it done. And yeah, it's most refreshing, just like you said, to hear the name Teron Vincent coming out of Ryan Day's mouth as being possibly even a leader in that group, you know, and he even mentioned Noah Potter, a guy that, you know, defensive end wearing number 97, you know, it's like putting a target on your back at Ohio State, but you got to give it up to him for that. But they've been even sliding him inside a little bit, you know, probably a 3 technique, but the bottom line is, you know, all of those guys, they're, like I said, spring is that time when you're mixing and matching and just trying to come up with some guys that'll just play, get after it and stuff. But goes back to my concern about this defense. If we're just kind of concentrating on the defense in this Tim May podcast edition, you know, my concern, I think they're going to have 3-4 linebackers that can play in the final analysis. My concern is that secondary and whether, because they've got talent there. Agreed, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, and I can't argue at that point at all. We both agree that there's very talented players at all 3 of those units. Ohio State's got the makings of a very good defense, but it's probably going to be a point of frustration when they leave on April 17th that they didn't get to have a true competition for all those spots or a true evaluation. And they probably wanted to put aside a lot of this conversation about number 122 and the amount of points that they gave up against Alabama, or that the defense is an issue. You know, they're not going to escape that. That's going to continue throughout the summer because we just don't know who's going to play all these roles.
Right. But I'm like you. I've got my eye on Lathan Ransom. I mean, I've got my eye on. There's a guy that should play. Ronnie Hickman flashed last year. Then he got, I think, banged up right after he flashed. I mean, there's a guy who showed he was willing to stick his neck out and get in there, you know, and get after it. And so those are the kind of guys that catch my eye. And like you said, Craig Young, if you go to a football practice, if you don't notice Craig Young, then, you know, you need a new prescription. And it's not cowbell. It's new glasses. You know, those are just some guys. But, man, those corners, confidence is everything. When you saw some of those corners backing off last year, in certain situations where you probably would like to have seen them step up. Probably they were even asked to step up, but he knows the guy finally in the fray knows what he is and isn't capable of at that very second in time. And sometimes you see guys play a little soft because they're not really confident in their ability. And you saw that a lot, I think, off and on last year, even with Shaun Wade, right?
Yeah. And I was going to say, I don't think that, you know, some people want to make conclusions about Kerry Combs and if that was the way he was choosing to call a defense. I think it was a part of this factor that we weren't even fully aware of at that point was Shaun Wade. That confidence in his ability was because of his health. Yeah. That he was dealing with issues. Sevyn Banks also was dealing with part of what he's missing with right now, I'm told, is a knee injury that he was playing through last year. So if both of those guys, they're your top corners, and you don't have that confidence yet in the other guys, which Legend Cavazos had talked about him not being healthy. Yeah. Ryan Watts maybe not, you know, having that full opportunity to learn. You still had to play Sevyn Banks and Shaun Wade, and they both weren't 100% healthy. Well, then you have to play more off coverage, or I don't even know what you do in the other option. Yeah. So a lot of that stuff, like they're still not fully healthy now. So we still look like your whole thing that you're saying here, like we don't know. Yeah, what it's going to look like, how much press man they're going to play, who's going to play that press man. Like they have to get fully healthy. They're still just not to that point, and they weren't last year. So that was another part of this where you knew the guys who were out on the unavailability list with the COVID issues or with long-term injuries like Cam Brown and Court Williams. That's the stuff that you knew was already a problem. But there also was an element where we didn't know the severity for Sevyn Banks or Shaun Wade that was complicating what they were doing on the field and what they were capable of. Your confidence, if you're not physically able to do it, that's obviously going to, you know, you're not going to want to play press against Alabama if you are at 95%, 90%, 85% or less. And that was, Sean Wade or Seven Banks would have to answer that to where exactly they were at that point last year, but nobody was fully healthy in that secondary. And again, it's one explanation. I know people think that I'm making excuses for them. I'm just trying to put it in perspective for why that happened and why it might not this year.
Yeah, it's really funny when people think you're making excuses for them, because all we're talking about is what happened, what we know happened, what we didn't necessarily always know what happened last year. Because like you said, they keep these things tight to the vest. And even though you hear some things as the season goes on, confirming those is a total different matter, but let's face it, Devontae Smith has seen more pressing at a Panini store than he did in that game. And, that was unbelievable. Some of the wide open spaces that the receivers were running through for Alabama. And like I always told you, though, I always thought Ohio State's shot in that game. The reason I picked them was I really liked the way the offense was playing coming out of that Clemson game, and just, point for point, man, like tennis, take them to the fifth set, and then whatever you call that afterwards, the overtime. What do they call that overtime in tennis? I can't remember. It's
just the tiebreaker, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about pointing. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, we don't cover a lot of tennis on this podcast.
I know. You know what? We don't cover a lot of women's hockey on this podcast either. That's a good segue. Thank you very much there. Awesome. But, I had the privilege of speaking with Tatum Skaggs, who was one of the captains of the Ohio State women's hockey team, like I said in my intro earlier. And we had a really interesting conversation. She comes from a family of 6 kids and just played hockey all the way through her juniors, all the way up to Ohio State, and has been part of like a real, I don't even know if it's a renaissance, a surge of the Ohio State women's hockey team over the last 4 seasons under head coach Nadine Muzzerall. So, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with her, because I found it to be very interesting. As I promised you, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to start a little different segment on the Tim May podcast from time to time. I want to recognize some people who deserve recognition, who for basically a college career well done. And I'm starting with Tatum Skaggs. By the way, are you kin to Boz Skaggs or Ricky Skaggs, Tatum?
I wish I could say I'm related, but our Skaggs family is kind of just our own, and we're not related to anyone famous.
I got you. But, ladies and gentlemen, if you're paying attention at all, Tatum Skaggs was a primary mover and shaker on the Ohio State women's hockey team the last 4 years. They've played, of course, in 2 Final Fours over those 4 years. Basically great achievement. She's leaving Ohio State. This was her senior season this past year. They got beaten the Frozen Four. But as the old saying goes, to get beat the Frozen Four, you got to get to the Frozen Four. Isn't that right, Tatum?
That's how you get there, yeah.
But she's leaving as the number 4 all-time goal scorer in Ohio State history. I think it was 65, if my numbers are right. My math sometimes is a little shaky. But number one, congratulations on a college career well done, Tatum, and welcome to the Tim May podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
Hey, just tell me what everybody knows. We chronicled all through the last 12 months on my podcast and wrote stories, and everybody else knows about the Ohio State football team and the challenges it faced, basically the last 12 months. It's still ongoing to a certain extent, but, kind of like left in the shadows a little bit were teams like yours that still managed to have a season, still managed to have an outstanding season. And I'm just looking, as you look back on it, what kind of a challenge was it? I was talking with a Ohio State football player a couple of weeks ago who got done playing football, and now it looks like it got over just like that. But while you were going through it, it had to be quite the grind a little bit. I was just saying, what kind of challenge did you guys face on that women's hockey team?
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of been a grueling last 12 months. And especially as an athlete in college, you kind of dream of this experience. You only get 4 years and you try to make the most of every year. And so last year, I remember we just came off of a high of winning the WCHA championship for our league. And we had a lot of momentum and speed and just, that grit and relentlessness to go into the NCAA Final 8 tournament. And we were at the airport ready to take off to play Minnesota. And at that point in time, we got a call from our AD that we got to grab our bags and come back to the rink. There's just a lot going on right now. They didn't want to ship us off to Minnesota quite yet with obviously March Madness being canceled. And so on and so forth. And so I just think over the last 12 months, the challenges have been continuing to work as hard as you can and put that work in hopes for a season. Yeah. So all summer, all of us were training hard every single day, hitting the weight room, trying to find ice and make the most out of what we could with our resources in a pandemic. But you just always had to keep in mind that when we get the green light that there's a season, we're going to be hitting the ice hard and we're going to be flying and our opponents aren't going to know what hit them. So just that was like the mental challenge, I'd say, that I think all athletes took on these last 12 months. And I just I'm just so incredibly grateful for Ohio State and obviously giving us the season, and being my senior season, it was so special still. And so I think that, and I think all the other athletes that put the same work and time in to make that season happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, y'all would have played in three Frozen Fours out of four during your career. And that's amazing when you think back on it now, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, to think back, we just had our banquet the other day, and to look back to see where the program was to where it is now is we hit our record ranking in our program all year, and that was number 2. Yeah. If someone 7 years ago would have told me that Ohio State was going to be number 2, I probably would have laughed and been like, what? But so just to watch this program grow and just see players all over the world calling our coach being, I want to be a Buckeye. Like, that hasn't happened before. And so it's amazing to see just where the program's gone, and hopefully that we continue to just be a powerhouse in women's hockey.
Yeah. And that's Coach Nadine Muzeral. Am I getting close to pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah. Coach Muzeral. Yep.
Coach Muzeral. Just call her coach, right? But yeah. The bottom line, what is it that she has brought that's special in your opinion? Because you've grown up playing hockey. You played in the Chicago Mission team as an under 19 or U19 team and stuff, and had some great success with that team and stuff. But Coach Muzeral, what has she brought that you think has brought you this team to the elite level?
Yeah. So. Coach Muzz, to start off, is someone incredibly special. She's very special to me and someone that I will hold near and dear to my heart forever. She is a loyal person. She is someone who I would go to war with every single day. Something that she's brought to the table is a new sense of accountability. She holds us accountable for our actions on and off the ice, the people we are on and off the ice. And she's built a culture that we as players have bought into. And it's kind of like, if you're going to be here, you're going to put in 120%. Yeah. And so the culture that she's brought, we have 4 pillars that we stand by. And that is just something that I think has changed us as players. We take those 4 pillars and we internalize them and take it how we want. And that's how we play for each other. We play for our coaching staff. We play for the people before us. We play for the little girls that are, generations to come. And so I just think Coach Muzz has brought in so much love and determination to get this program on the map. And that's exactly what she did.
Hey, give us an example of what are the 4 pillars? What are they? Can you let us know?
Yeah. So our 4 pillars is relentless, grateful, sacrifice, and choices. So those 4 kind of for us, relentless, be relentless on the puck, forecheck, your legs may hurt, but, mentally be strong and go get that puck, play sound defense. Sacrifice, as D1 athletes, like, to get here, you've had to sacrifice. And so that's kind of like the sense of, you're going to give up your Friday, Saturday nights in college because you're going to be playing. And when we have off, you're going to be home. You're not, going out. And being grateful is just to put that jersey over your head is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah. So be grateful for that opportunity every time you step on the ice. Like, don't waste anyone else's time. And so it's the culture that she's brought and that we've bought into. Kudos to all my teammates as well, because we're players who do buy in. You can build a culture and do as much as you want, but if you don't have players that buy in, what are you really doing? So
yeah. So when as you're going to graduate, I think end of this semester or next semester.
I'm graduating on May 9th.
Yeah, on May 9th. And this is what's interesting to me is you're from Wisconsin. I think you were born in Heartland, Wisconsin. Am I correct?
Yep, born in Heartland, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I saw one of your brothers had a birthplace. Trenton, who's playing hockey, had a birthplace in Oconomowoc. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oconomowoc. Yep.
Yeah, practice whatever. I went to Wisconsin on vacation a long time ago, back in the 60s, and I was always impressed with the names of some of the towns, but I digress. Bottom line is you have 4 brothers and 1 other sister. So y'all have a complete hockey team. So it made sense that you grew up as a hockey player. Were your mom and dad, were they involved in hockey other than taking you guys to the rink?
Oh, geez. I hope my dad watches this. My dad will claim he was a very good athlete and played hockey, but I have yet to see pictures and evidence that ever happened.
Well,
but yes, our whole family is just athletes all around. My sister dances. Obviously that's hard. That's talent and skill. One brother did not end up taking up hockey. He was a soccer player, very good soccer player. But my older brothers, who I look up to, I would say is my biggest role model in my life. And I want to resemble him. And so growing up, I was like, I want to be like Taylor. I want to be like Taylor. And my parents begged me. My mom begged me not to play hockey. She was like, I will go take you to the store and shop. I'll get you 2 outfits if you just don't play hockey. And I was like, no, Mom, I want to play. Yeah. And so she's like, all right, I'll let you try and hopefully you don't like it. Here we are 14 years later and graduating college as a hockey player.
Not only a hockey player, an Ohio State hockey player. And this is, by the way, I think all of your siblings, their name starts with T. Am I right about that?
Yep. Taylor, Trevor, Tatum, Tori, Trenton, Ty.
So what's up with that?
I think they just started with one, and I think they got to my brother Trevor, and they're like, well, we have 2 T's, so let's find a girl name with a T. And at that point in time, they had 3 T's, so why not have 6 T's?
Yeah. Well, we went with the cuss sound. We've got Kyle, Corey, and Caroline were our 3 kids. So, everybody has their quirks, right?
Exactly. Every family has their niche.
I'm intrigued by this, though. I was checking out y'all's roster again, just double checking. I think of the players listed on the 2020, 2021, say that 3 times, Ohio State women's hockey roster, there was 1 player from Ohio. Am I right about that? Lindsay Wallace from Seven Hills. All the rest of you players, I keep saying guys, sorry about all the rest of you gals are imports in one way or another. Yet you're leaving here bleeding scarlet and gray. I mean, number one, what attracted you to Ohio State? Was it Coach Muzzerall? And number 2, you touched on it a while ago. You expect this to just explode now, right? I mean, from Ohio State being an international, for want of another term, attraction for female hockey players.
Yeah, so I actually committed at a pretty young age. I had just gone to summer camp in 8th grade and committed freshman year. I actually did not commit to Coach Muzz. I committed to Nate Hannerhan at the time. So we've been through a couple coaches here at Ohio State, but by the time that I got here, I had Coach Muzz. But so it's just awesome to see Lindsay Walsh. She's such an ambassador of the sport in Ohio. I knew growing up that being, a girl hockey player in Wisconsin, I thought I was going to bleed Badger.
Yeah.
And that ended up not happening. And God always has a plan for everything. And Ohio State has been nothing but amazing. I'm a special education major. And so Ohio State has a very good special education program that I'll be graduating with. And just the opportunity to help build a program to me is something that I have taken pride in over the last 4 years. Now, by no means has this been a perfect ride, and there's things that I wish I could have done differently, of course, but I hope to look back on the program years to come and kind of just be grateful and, very happy that, I didn't walk into a team that was a national championship team every single year, but I went and I've grinded through the good and the bad and built a program that girls want to be Buckeyes now. So I'm just so happy that I did 4 years of hockey here at Ohio State. And I just thank the university so much.
Yeah. And by the way, that wasn't a slam at all. I mean, when I brought up the fact of so many players from all over the world, basically all over the world, but definitely Canada and the United States. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but I mean, Justin Fields, is from Georgia. You know what I mean? So,
right.
Eddie George was from Pennsylvania, right on down the line. I mean, great players in Ohio State football history, and right on down the line. I know the women's crew team, when they were really on top and winning those consecutive national championships, they had players from all over Europe, so it's
right.
Is a crew person a player, by the way? Maybe I need to look that definition up.
Let me know what you find. I don't know either.
Hey, I know you're a player, and I want to get back to last year just real quick. You guys were coming off a team high. You were coming off a ridiculous personal high. I think you scored the winning goal in each of the last 2 games of that WCHA tournament, if I'm not mistaken. And I think it was Michael Bassford, the guy who set us up with this interview, who pointed out that he thinks those were the first winning goals of your career, but enlighten me there. But yeah, that had to be such a high and then such a low. It's such a strange couple of days, right?
Yeah, it was definitely a weird couple of days. Like I said, our team was coming off of like a crazy high of first ever program, championship win.
Yeah.
Personally, it was kind of that moment as an athlete that you dream of as a little girl of, okay, like who's going to score that final goal? Who's going to get that game winner? To me, I've never had that experience before. I've kind of been the one cheering on the person that's done that every year.
Yeah.
But for it to be me, I just, all glory to God. Like, that was amazing. My mom was in the stands, my sister, and I looked at her and she was bawling. My mom was. And so emotions were high. But yeah, like you said, it was a low 4 days later.
Yeah.
It was a low that I never thought I'd experience. And my heart goes out to the seniors that year because fun stat is 14 out of the last 17 championships. Coach Muzz was just telling us 14 out of the last 17, who's ever won the WCHA has gone on to win the national championship. And so there'll always be a little thing in the back of my mind that says last year was our year and we would have won Natty Champs. But unfortunately, that's not how it played out. And but we had a season this year and that's all I'm happy about.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can't, if you could make chemistry on a team and put all the pieces together that it takes to make a championship team, you need to move to Las Vegas and start, bottling that and then going on those inspirations, because you never know when a team is going to come together, what's going to be the catalyst, et cetera. And like you said, you grew up in Wisconsin. Is it bittersweet that, the 2 of the last 3 games of your career? I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, losses to Wisconsin and in between a quarterfinal win over Boston College and NCAAs. But that is kind of interesting, isn't it? Poetic to a certain extent.
I mean, I'll give the Badgers credit. They're a phenomenal program, great players that they are able to recruit, and they know how to play hockey. But it's kind of, last year was a couple monumental games against the Badgers for me. And every time we stepped on the ice with them, I had a little chip on my shoulder, like, I'm going to go get you guys. But it's a little bittersweet to lose to the Badgers in my final game. But I'm kind of like someone who, if I'm going to get beat by them, and I know I've beat them before. The Badgers that went on to win the national championship, but it sticks with me that we've beat the Badgers so many times that it's kind of like that could have been our game and our championship. So
yeah. Hey, the crazy thing about hockey, and I remember I told the first Columbus Blue Jackets coach, he came out to an Ohio State football practice one time. I think his name was Dave King. And I told him, I said, what would drive me nuts about your sport is y'all practice all these things, all these plays, all these set shots and everything. But so many times it's chaos, a goal out of chaos that determines not only whether you won or lost, but whether you were a champion or not, whether you're a hero or not. And that's just, football plays pretty much drawn up, and people have to make blocks and et cetera, but they kind of either work or don't. But hockey is so chaotic, right? I mean,
yeah. Controlled chaos.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is what I'm leading up to. How many games do you think you've played as an amateur and as a high school player and a college player? I'm trying to remember how many games you played even at Ohio State, but it's well into the hundreds, right?
Yeah, I think it was I think I appeared, there wasn't one game I missed. So I think I appeared in, let's do the math. It's 34, 36 games a season. So let's say around 127-ish.
Yeah.
But I think that's how many I played here at Ohio State.
And then, like I said, hundreds as an amateur, I mean, as a youth, et cetera. What I'm getting to here is, are you done playing hockey?
That's a good question. Obviously, my dreams are to continue to pursue the USA national hockey team. I just got back from national team camp 2 days ago.
Wow.
But I don't know if I hope to not be done. If the Olympics don't work out and everything, I want to pursue hockey in Europe for, I think, a year and travel and play fun hockey in Sweden. But as of right now, I don't believe that was the last time I tied my skates for a game. I hope to continue and see where life takes me.
I was going to say, because, football players, they always have the NFL they're getting ready for. You heard about the Ohio State Pro Day the other day and all this kind of stuff. And, still very few of them even go on to the NFL. There's kind of a legend about how many guys actually play in the NFL from these big time schools. But the bottom line is with female sports now, except for basketball, I'm trying to think, and of course, women's golf and a few others, maybe tennis, obviously. There kind of comes a dead end a little bit, right? I mean, on your career, and if you're not there yet, you can almost see it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and the things that our national team players are doing with trying to grow the sport of women's hockey is amazing. Yeah. There's a couple of professional leagues, the PWHPA and the NWHL. Right now, I don't know how sustainable they are with making a living and stuff, but they're definitely putting in a lot of work to make it sustainable so that girls don't have to see the end when college is over.
Yeah.
And so hopefully I can take part of the movement in helping grow women's hockey professionally after, whatever my future endeavors are with Europe or getting a job, whatever it may be. But yeah, right now I don't feel that it's the end, but of course you never know. Maybe another global pandemic hits and it might be the end.
Oh yeah, it might be the end for everybody. Oh my goodness. Hey, last thing, you're a special education major. You've been putting in work, I think around Columbus, going to different schools and opportunities to not only practice what you're learning, but also it shows your dedication to it. What drove you that direction for that kind of major, and where do you want to take that, for want of another term?
Yeah. So something that I think really helped me decide what I wanted to do is I just have a passion for kids with special needs. I feel that they are just as equal as everyone else in society. And so I want to help them feel like that. And I want to help others, give people the chance. So I babysit 2 boys back at home that are very near and dear to my heart, Max and Marvin. They're 2 boys who are adopted from Guatemala, and they both have special needs. And so they are just the life of the party. They bring me so much joy and smile and laughter that they kind of were the biggest impact on just showing me that that's my passion. And right now, I don't know what I want to do with it quite yet. Work in a school or do home services or, work for an organization. I'm not quite sure, but there's a need for those people right now. And so I just hope to get into the field because I know I'll absolutely love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Tatum, you meet people, and you can see right away people who have passion, not only for their sport, but for their life and stuff. And it's been a real pleasure to meet someone with your kind of passion for all kinds of things. And I wish you nothing but the best. And man, I really appreciate you coming on the Tim May podcast.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun getting to know you, and Yeah, it's been an awesome year, and I'm glad that you're able to expand your podcast to some female hockey players.
Well, I've been getting a little bit of heat at home here. My wife was a high jump champion at Ohio State back in the mid to late '70s, and she was on, believe it or not, she was on scholarship way back when, and that was when they first started it. And she had about up to here with football players back then from the standpoint of what they were getting in, as opposed to what the female athletes were getting on scholarship. Yeah. But hey, name, image, and likeness is right around the corner. I think you would have made a fortune in that if they'd just gotten off their rear ends and passed that. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know how much I would have made off of that, but yeah.
Well, you would have had a shot to make something. That's the point.
True. I would have maybe had a chance, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that all goes with the NCAA and likeness and image and stuff like that.
Are you for that? I mean, what's just your take? I mean, you're now a person who's played, sports for 4 years in college, and if a person can benefit from their name, image, or likeness, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, know exactly.
Should they have that right?
That's kind of a hard question to answer black and white, but for me personally, I know that Ohio State has given me so much opportunity and open doors of opportunity for me to earn more after college. And right now I know that I think it's tough. I don't play a sport that necessarily brings in that much money. So I'm kind of looking at it the perspective outside of Ohio State takes very good care of their athletes. They feed us. They make sure that we're taken care of in every shape and form. So right now I'd say probably not a huge fan of it, but I'm also not someone who can make thousands and thousands of dollars off of my name, image, and likeness. So I'm sure if you go ask a football player like Justin Fields, I'm sure he would like a little more extra money in his pocket. But yeah, I think that I'm just going to be honest. I don't know if I think that should be a thing, but yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'm glad you were honest. I mean, personally, you're well-spoken, you're attractive. I mean, you're a star on a team and stuff. I think you would have found a way, or someone would have found a way to maybe put a little more money in your pocket. But, who knows? I mean, I'm always for all of you folks getting whatever you can get one way or the other. I'm 67 and I've watched it evolve, and it's a big money proposition, definitely the two major sports. But yeah, I see where you're coming from too. But hey, Tatum, see, here's the thing. How much could you have gotten off the nickname Taters? You could have been a spokesman for a potato chip company. Yeah. People didn't know that was your nickname, but they would have.
Or something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, hey, Tatum, thanks for joining the Tim May podcast once again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I told you Tatum Skaggs, or her nickname is Taters, was going to be an interesting interview, and it was, wasn't it? Wasn't it awesome?
Oh, I'm kind of surprised that nobody's ever called me Taters. I eat them in any form, any capacity. That's cool. She's got a good one.
Yeah, I think you got to hit home runs to get that nickname, Taters. Okay. He hits a lot of taters. But I digress. Hey, you know what? I appreciate you joining me again. Awesome. And we kind of chopped up what I consider to be the big concern about this Ohio State defense as it works its way through spring with its fingers crossed, to a certain extent. But next week, headed into the spring game, previewing the spring game, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks in particular, the passing game in general, what we expect to see in that game. Like I've told you all along, I expect them to come out throwing the ball a lot, because the two things they got to work on is synchronizing brand new quarterback with a pretty good fleet of receivers, including the tight ends and running backs, and then a defense that needs to prove or needs to show itself, get some kind of confidence coming out of the spring that it can stop a pretty good passing attack. It is kind of adding up to an interesting spring game, isn't it?
Yeah, and the other part of that, as we talk about, pretty much every April, is that you're not going to do a lot of live tackling. They might not do any. So this week, actually, this is the spring game. There'll be a scrimmage on Saturday that will be live hitting, full go. That's going to be the true evaluation point for Ryan Day or for Corey Dennis and Kevin Wilson, looking at those quarterbacks as they head into the summer. What they do on April 17th, when we get to watch, when some amount of fans will get to watch, that's going to be a good show, and it'll help inform more opinions. And it does matter in some way as one of 15 and the greater scheme but the live one, the real one, hopefully we get some information about that for the next podcast next week. I'm sure we'll get a little bit of insight for it. Don't expect to get to watch it as we did on Friday and Monday morning, but there's a big one coming this week, and maybe some more indications about which way this is heading, which you and I both agree at this point is trending towards CJ Stroud.
Exactly. But you know what? Until next week, this is Tim May for Awesome Ward. We'll see you then.